Build your character.
Ray. Hello to our wonderful viewers. This is the Ring Radio Hour, and I'm your host, Ray. Today I'm in a video game world with my friend Andy.
Hi guys, my name's Andrew. How is it going?
Today, as our topic of discussion is self-esteem. I feel like a lot of people do end up with low self-esteem because they're comparing themselves to other people. They'll look at like that girl and be like, "Oh my God, she's so skinny. I wish I could be like that." And things like that end up like whenever you compare yourself to someone else, you end up getting this feeling like, "Oh, is what I should be," instead of accepting what you are.
I would say that is definitely the case. One of the largest things is with, especially school and school children, they see children with things that they particularly want, or they might encounter individuals who flaunt certain things over them, whether it be elementary, middle, or high. High, mostly the biggest problem of everything, because that's where bullying is the biggest problem. But even so, it it comes from that environment of some people have way more privileges than others, but it also, I would say, comes from the home environment too. It's like sometimes if you have parents who are self-deprecating, or if they don't necessarily encourage you or compliment you enough, you might find yourself with a lack of confidence. The parenting style can make a huge difference on the outcome of a kid.
I know, like, in my case, I feel like school environment you could feel like super competitive. You have to get the best grades, you have to be the person with like the most friends. There's even TV shows usually depict it like, oh my God, I have to be like the most popular person in school. So you end up like always trying to get that edge over someone else. At home, you'd think like, oh, this is the place like you can have peace, but even your parents are also like judging you, thinking like, oh, I have to be the best to impress them.
Yeah, so competition is fun. I personally love competition and can be quite competitive, but it there's that there's that fine line between healthy competition and then just like going overboard. Like to the point where you're like, I'm not good enough, or on the opposite side, I'm better than everybody else. And those types of people tend to bring the other people down, which can definitely severely affect the self-esteem.
I guess like in a way you could see like, oh, life is this game where like I'm supposed to have fun, but you end up like working too hard at it to the point you're not really enjoying it anymore. You're just really trying to like be the best at everyone else and constantly evaluating yourself to be like, okay, I'm at this level and I need to be up there.
I definitely understand that feeling just greatly. My entire life, I have been a huge perfectionist. Mostly in school, I've always strived to get like perfect straight A's, do amazing here and there. And it wasn't always necessarily a pressure from my home environment. Like my parents were never like super strict, but the students around me, like in the gifted and talented program and like other things like IB, all the kids tend to be kind of astute but somewhat snobby. So it's kind of like that's the point where competition is like, I want to smash their face into the ground metaphorically with how amazing I am. But obviously, when you might not live up to that high standard of expectations you make for yourself, it feels super cruddy and you can really take a huge knock to your self-esteem that way.
I feel like it's so weird. Like when you're in the advanced program, you end up meeting people who like can do it all. Not only is their grades perfect, they're like always like socializing. They're in this club and that club. They volunteer, and you're like, how many hours are in your day? How are you doing all this?
It is pretty insane, some of the things that some students do. But I feel like schools really need to focus less on performance and more so on the, not that performance is bad, but they need to guarantee the welfare of their students, because while the ahead program is nice if you actually want to advance, like, don't hold someone back if they don't need to be held back, but at the same time make sure they're doing okay and not to like just keep shoving more work on them until they're burnt out.
I feel like many schools don't really think about like, oh, this really affects people's mental health. It's usually something you're expected to deal with on your own, not something you're formally taught.
Yeah, the available guidance counselors is usually few and far between for schools. And even then, it's usually only like one, maybe two if you're lucky. And if you don't like get super well along with the person who's there, you just kind of end up suffering if you don't have a strong enough support network.
I feel like in my case, it's just like, oh man, I have like a billion different people in my support system right now. Like you honestly need help from like therapists, nutritionists, different doctors. It's like ends up so much work to put the effort in. Like, oh, I'm gonna like make myself better to the point where it just gets stressful.
It's always good to strive to make oneself better, but at the same time, you need that kind of balance where you don't immediately try to, I should say, just run headfirst into it, and more so take baby steps improving. Just because people like to take extreme routes, like, oh, I'm gonna start exercising every single day, and you can tell, like with New Year's resolutions, that's like one of the big things where people are
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna boost my self-esteem by going to the gym every single day. Go for a week, they're done. I'm gonna cut out all forms of sugar of my life, all forms of sugar in my life. And next thing you know, maybe a month they don't have any sugar, and then they relapse. So it's all about taking it slow and building up your own image and confidence in a gradual sense.
I feel like it's not as simple as just like, oh, like in the game world, it's like, oh, like if I want to change, I just like level up and then do this specifically. I just grind for a couple hours and I got it. But then in like real life, it's much difficult process that you have to keep at it. Just like, oh, like if I'm gonna lose weight, it means eating healthy. It means exercising all the time. It means like cutting out all these sugars that I'm drinking, eating regularly. I make sure. So all these different factors make life a bit more complicated.
Life is definitely more complicated because in in gaming world, you could just kind of go like, okay, once I hit a certain point, I don't have to do this thing anymore. Life, that's not the case at all. You have to maintain it. You have to invite it into your lifestyle and keep it there.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's just gonna either turn somewhere that you didn't want to, or just end up back where you were before. But in gaming, you can't really.
You can't digress.
There's a few exceptions with moving back in games, but for the most part, in the game, you're usually moving forward at every point.
Yeah, you can get up to like max level and then be like, okay, I'm done now. Everything is perfect. But like when in reality, you're constantly chasing that goal, but you're never actually reached that point where everything is perfect. So it's more kind of like, okay, thinking about where you are now and then be like, I accept who I am right now. It doesn't have to be like super amazing.
Yeah, that should be the true definition of perfect, is that you are satisfied with everything the way that it is. Now, there is obviously, everything could, in theory, be better, but if you're happy with what you have now, then it's perfect. And if you don't consider that perfect and as imperfect, you should try to work towards that, because it's like you're never truly going to reach a point where everything is optimal. There's going to have to be some opportunistic cost. But that's okay as long as you're fine and happy with doing it, and the risk is worth it, then go for it.
Yeah, I feel like in the end, as long as you're finally like happy with yourself, that's where you really should be aiming for.
True goal is just personal happiness. People will spend their lives in jobs and careers that they don't enjoy, and it's like you're just taking away from yourself at that point. Now, obviously there's sustainability, but under the right with the right mood and attitude towards something, you can live a sustainable life as borderline anything.
You could be like a hobo on the side of the street, but if it's the life you're satisfied with, go ham, man.
I mean, if you can live a life where you're homeless, and specifically like maybe traveling on the road, if that's what makes you happy and you're able to like sustain your lifestyle like that, I mean, go for it. That
You
sounds
do
like
you.
Did you say me?
No, you. Not you specifically.
Oh yeah, no. I'm more of a indoors person, and I quite enjoy being in a house and on a bed.
Yes, very perfect. All right, that is all I wanted to discuss for today. Thank you for being here, Andy.
Really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope all of you out there will be able to help your own self-esteem and build your own confidence slowly, gradually, but happily.
Yep. Have a nice day, all of our viewers.